Welcome to another episode of the Impel 4 podcast. Today I have with me Mr. Bill Bell. I don't know if y'all can tell I'm nervous. I'm in front of a legend.
Come on.
He's not a Durham legend. Well,
Come on. Let's roll.
he's not a Durham legend, but he's a legend. How you doing?
Doing well. Glad to be here this morning.
I'm glad to have you here. Now, we officially met in Chapel Hill at a symposium, I guess you want to call it, barber talk. And first time I saw you was at Now Church.
Yeah, exactly.
A business event, but we didn't get to speak.
Yeah.
So I always want to talk to somebody that was into politics or in politics to give me a better understanding of it. So it was a perfect time to ask you.
Well,
So,
great.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're from Washington, D.C. or born there?
Well, I was born in Washington, D.C., but I really grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Finished elementary school, high school in Winston. After I finished high school in Winston, I went to Washington to attend Howard University.
Okay.
And I graduated from Howard in '61 with a BS in electrical engineering.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be in ROTC, so I was commissioned. Well, my first job after I left Howard was with Martin Marietta in Orlando, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in ROTC, so I was commissioned as a first lieutenant in the Army. So I went to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, where I served for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got out of service, I was working at the Research and Development Lab, and I stayed on there for a while and went to graduate school at New York University, where I got my master's in electrical engineering. And I got an offer from IBM Corporation here in Research Triangle Park in 1968, so I moved to Durham in 1968 to begin working with the IBM Corporation.
Mm. So how long was you there?
I retired from IBM in 1996.
Okay.
So I came to IBM assuming I'd probably be there 4 or 5 years, because IBM at that time was a company that sort of stood for I've been moved. So if you were going to move up in the corporation,
Right.
you tended to move. So I figured I'd be here 4 or 5 years.
Mm.
And I got involved in some community activities. I happened to be president of my neighborhood association. I was living at that time. We were living in Emory Woods Estates. And there was a zoning matter that came up that the community was against. And since I was president of the association, they'd asked me to sort of argue our case before the elected officials. And although we were in Durham County, we were outside the city of Durham, so we really were in Durham County, and the matter came before the Durham Board of County Commissioners. And in arguing our case, it took us almost a year, and we ended up losing. But I was probably stupid enough, young enough, naive enough to say, if you can't beat them, join them. So I decided to run for the Durham Board of County Commissioners in 1972, and I got elected. So that story went on from there.
So right now you stepping on all my questions, because I was going to ask you, how did you get involved in politics? So that tells me that. So did you have any other background in politics?
No,
Was your
not
mom
really.
and
As I
father?
said, when I came here, I figured I'd be here about 4 or 5 years, and then move on with the IBM Corporation. But as I said, I got involved in sort of community activities. I had some friends. In fact, my next door neighbor, he's deceased now, Willie Lovett, was very involved in community activities in Durham. And we had another friend who was working at IBM that ran for the city council doing between 68 and 72. And I did some things like handing out leaflets and stuff like that for him, but further thing from my mind in terms of actually getting involved as an elected official. But, things happen, and that's what happened to me. I got it.
So you was, before you became the mayor, you was just on the board.
No, before I became the mayor, I was elected to the Durham Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
And the Durham Board of County Commissioners is the body that governs all of Durham County. Its primary responsibilities are funding for schools, the sheriff's department, the jails, and pretty much anything that's outside of the city. And it's an elected board. And at that time, it was a 5-member board, still is a 5-member board. And the terms were for 2 years. And it was a partisan board. And when I say partisan, you ran as a Democrat or Republican or independent. I'm a lifelong Democrat, so I ran as a Democrat. And as I said, I was able to get elected. And I served on that board from 1972 to 1994. And I was chairman of the Durham Board of County Commissioners from 1982 to 1994. One of the issues that we got involved in at that time you had two separate school systems. You had a Durham City school system and a Durham County school system. And there were issues that were coming up, and the inevitable is we took the initiative, we've been Durham Board of County Commissioners, to merge the two school systems into what is now the Durham Public School System.
Okay.
And that was done in 1994. Well, I lost an election in 1994, and people say I lost because I sort of led the effort to merge the schools. Well, I told them I lost because I ain't got enough votes. That's the bottom line to it. But anyway, I lost, and I came back and I ran again in 1996 for the Durham Board of County Commissioners. I got elected. And then I ran again in 1998 and got reelected. And in 2000, I decided I wasn't going to run again. I had retired from IBM in 1996. I began working for UDI Community Development Corporation, where I'm still working now. And I figured my political life was pretty much set aside. And in 2001, some people I'd known for over a period of time, socially, politically, business, came to me and asked me if I would consider running for the mayor of the city of Durham. Mm-hmm. And that was hard for me because I said I pretty much put all that aside. And plus, I knew the guy that was the incumbent mayor, and I had support. In fact, I went to his announcement when he was announcing he was running again. But after thinking about it, talking to people, I decided to go ahead and run for the mayor in 2001, and I was lucky enough to get elected. And so I served as the mayor of Durham from 2001 to 2017, 8 terms, 2-year terms. Happened to be the longest serving mayor in Durham, and I decided I was not going to run again after 2017.
Yeah. So what made the people like you so much?
Well, I can't say they like me. I guess it's choices. The good thing about that is nobody makes you do these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody makes you run for office. Like I said, people ask, but ultimately you make the decision. Mm-hmm. And, people make their decision as whether or not they want to vote for you or not vote for you. I've just been fortunate, except for the time I lost the election in 94, that I've been successful in all my elections. And as I said, I came back in 1996 and got reelected to the same board. So
right, it was something about you because you said reelected 7 times or 8 times.
I was reelected 8 times for the city council as mayor because the mayor is a 2-year term. Okay. Whereas the other council members run for 4 years. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're in an election period now, if you recall. And when I was on the Board of County Commissioners, it was a 2-year term. So people ran every 2 years. So I was elected really 26 years, 13 times as a commissioner. They've changed it now. Now commissioners serve for 4 years. I told them they did that after I left, but seriously, so I've been in quite a few elections from 72 to 2017.
So what was some of your hardest challenges as a mayor?
Well, first of all, I think understanding the role of a mayor, people have different thoughts and ideas about what a mayor does. Mm-hmm. And in North Carolina, mayors are sort of different than what you might find in large cities like Atlanta and Washington, New York, and et cetera. But I say the mayor is the first among equals in the sense that the mayor leads the council in its board meetings and makes certain appointments and assignments and things like that, but still only has 1 vote. Mm-hmm. So when I say you're first among equals, you provide the leadership, but you still have only 1 vote. So if you're really going to get things accomplished, policies and et cetera, you have to have at least 3 other members on the board, on the city council, to be with you. Fortunately, for most of the things that we dealt with, and I'm not saying all the things I pushed, but things that I was involved in, I had the support of at least three or more of my council members, so we were able to get things done.
Right. So what is the difference between Durham and a bigger city as far as being a
Well,
mayor?
North Carolina is considered to be, even from the state legislature, local elected officials are considered to be part-time elected officials. And for example, in the county commissioners, they're part-time. In the sense part-time, they're supposed to be part-time. Depends on what you do. It gets to be full-time. Right. So what we do is we elect a professional, and the professional we elect hires a county manager, the city attorney, and city clerk, and they run the day-to-day roles of the county. Mm-hmm. Same thing is true with the mayor. The mayor and city council elects a city manager, a city attorney, and a city clerk, and they run the day-to-day responsibilities of the county. We set the policy. Whereas if you go to a city like Washington or Atlanta or New York, there the mayors are considered to be full-time. So what happens is you find that the mayors have different authorities. The mayor will maybe elect the police chief, the fire chief, the treasurer, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what works best for North Carolina is that there's a certain amount of stability. So if a mayor goes out of office, it doesn't mean the city manager goes out of office. It doesn't mean the county, the city attorney goes out of office, unless the new board wants to fire them. So you've got that stability. Whereas when you go to the larger cities, if the mayor leaves, then the police chief changes, the fire chief changes, and you just get a whole lot of different changes. And I think it's proven to be very effective in North Carolina because you don't have issues of draft and a lot of undue ones that you might find in the larger cities. We have AAA bond ratings in Durham. AAA bond rating means that's the highest rating that a municipality can get. So when a municipality issues a bond issue, say like for schools, say they want to do $50 million for schools, they go to the bond market. They get the best interest rate because they have a AAA rating. If they didn't have a AAA, they get something less than the best interest rate, which accrues to the taxpayer and paying off the bond. So it's good to have that type of rating. But to get that, it means that you have a very financial institution. It's very stable. They've looked at you very closely and what you do, and they say, well, you deserve the highest rating. So we had that for the city of Durham, and when I was on the county commission, we had for the county commissioners also. So, and you don't necessarily see that in the larger cities because of the other issues that go on with that.
Okay. Does that have anything to do with, you see a lot of times teachers want pay raises and...
No, that's a different issue.
Okay.
Different in the sense that, as I said, if you look at the responsibilities of the Board of County Commissioners, if you look at the responsibilities of city councils, the state legislature is the one that gives us our authority.
Okay.
They tell you what counties can do and what you can't do, tell cities what you can do and what you can't do, what authority you have. For the counties, they have assigned to they being the state legislature, have assigned to the counties the ability to provide funding for the local school systems. So the county will provide funding for the buildings. They will give a supplemental pay for the teachers. The teachers get paid statewide, so the state has a certain scale that they pay teachers. And North Carolina is known to be a right-to-work state in the sense that we really don't have, we have unions and we don't have unions. We have unions that come together, but you don't have to join a union if you don't want to. And a union can't stop you from doing your job. I mean, so in that sense, but they can help push your causes. And that's what you've seen recently in Durham, where the sanitation workers were saying we need more money, and the union came and fought their case and did that. So it's not that you can't have unions. It's just that they have different amounts of authority and what they can do and cannot do, and that's because of what the state legislature does.
So what is your take on teachers' pay raise?
Well, I've always supported it.
Okay.
And again, as a mayor, the city council is not responsible for paying the teachers of schools. As a county commissioner, I said our responsibilities were to providing for the buildings, giving a supplemental pay to teachers, just like we provided for the jail. The sheriff is an independent authority, runs on his own, but still his money comes from fees and fines and whatever the county commissioners give him to run his jail. So in terms of being supportive of teachers, I've always felt that teachers should be paid much more than they are. I mean, if you think of the responsibilities that they have, molding out young people who are going to be future leaders is very important. So I've been always supportive. I was supportive when we gave them supplemental pay because we did have control over that as county commissioners, and we constantly paid one of the highest supplements that teachers got in the state of North Carolina.
Okay. So in doing my research,
That's fine.
around 2007, so I'm always concerned about health and living.
Sure.
And I hear a lot of things about our water in every city.
Sure.
And I seen they had lead in the area.
Well, that's a little bit different. I'm glad you raised that because again,
Right.
it's like people have different understandings of what city councils do, what county commissioners do, what mayors do,
Right.
and et cetera.
Well, I asked that because I seen who you was running against. He was bringing that up to you, saying you knew about it and all that. But that's,
Well, I can't remember who I ran against in 2000. I was
Thomas
mad.
Stiff, I
Thomas
think it was.
Stiff.
Yeah,
Thomas
yeah,
Stiff. Oh,
yeah.
yeah. And Thomas and I are good friends.
Okay.
That was an interesting race that we had. But the city provides for the water and sewer in the city of Durham and also outside the city into the county, except for sewer treatment plant is in the counties in Research Triangle Park. That's under the county's jurisdiction. But Durham has some of the safest water in the state of North Carolina. We always get high ratings for our water. In terms of lead in the water, that's an issue that people tried to make an issue that really wasn't an issue. Nobody got sick. No, there weren't any health problems as a result of that. Now, when you said lead, I thought you were going to talk about what's been happening in the recreation centers.
I was going to ask you about recreation centers too. So.
And now I'm out of office now, but parks and recreation does come under the responsibility of the city. And so I don't want to get into details, and I don't say I know enough about it, but that is a city responsibility, and I'm sure they're going to do what they need to do to correct it.
Now, when you make sure we're on the same page, I was going to ask you about as far as crime in Durham or, not having enough recreation centers for youth and teens. That's what I was going to ask you about.
Okay, well, I think, again, I've been out of office since 2017.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm up on it as I was then.
Right.
But we had a great parks and recreation center. You can always ask for more because you got to pay for it. But I think the ones that we had were well run, with the exception of the issues that have come up now relative to this issue about finding lead in some of the center places. But the city council is responsible for paying for parks and recreation in the city of Durham.
Okay. So now we're talking about funding and money and this and that. I'm going to ask you, what do you think about the money going to Ukraine?
Going to Ukraine?
Yeah.
We're getting into a very not local issue. It's local in the sense that it's your tax money.
Right, yeah.
But decisions being made at the executive level up in Washington. I think we should support them. I mean, I think there are wider implications in terms of what happens if Russia takes over Ukraine. Because there's no question that if they're allowed to take over Ukraine, then the next step are other countries next to them. And some of those countries are our allies. And being a part of NATO, when I say NATO, the United States being a part of NATO, they have a responsibility to protect our allies if they, something happens. So the hope is that you can stop that aggression the Russian has in Ukraine to prevent him from doing something further along the line.
Yeah. Now I ask you these questions because me and you was talking before we got on here. Like politics I've never been into politics, never really understood it. Matter of fact, my first time voting was I was 32, 34 maybe. That's when so I couldn't vote. I came out of prison in 1999, and so I was believed to think that I couldn't vote because I had a felony. And in 2009, when Obama was running, a guy came in a barbershop. He said, "No, you can vote because you're not a felon no more." So that's what we believe. That's what we're taught, that you're a felon, you can't ever vote. So that's the first time I voted. So I never really paid attention to politics, and I try to get a better understanding of it. So why do you think voting is so important?
Well, if you're concerned about the things you talked about, health, water and sewer, police protection, fire protection, then I've told you who's responsible for providing that. It's the cities and counties. But the city manager, the police chief, the fire chief, they can only do so much if they don't have the funds.
Right.
And the people that decide what the funding is going to be are those elected officials on the city council, those elected officials on the county commissioners. So if your concern is that you think, we should be paying our city employees more, you think we should be doing more about our streets and water and sewer and those things, then the city council is where that is. So you want to find people who at least are in agreement or supportive for your ideas. And you've got just as much say-so in that as the next person because you got to vote. And your vote counts. So let me tell you, I can tell you exactly how I know it makes a difference. I told you that I ran for mayor in 2001, okay? I wasn't an unknown. I mean, I'd been on county commissioners for 26 years, and everybody votes for the county commissioners as opposed to the city. You only vote if you're in the city for the city council, but if you live in the county, whether you're in the city or outside the city, you vote for the county commissioners. So I wasn't like an unknown. When I ran for mayor in 2001, I won the primary, and the primary is where if you have a certain number of people running for office, you have a primary to wind it down to at least 2. For example, we just had an election. A lot of people were running for mayor. I think 7, 8 people were running for mayor. The top 2 persons that won go on to the general election, and that's what we've got now. Well, the same thing was true in my case. I can't recall how many people were running for mayor, but I won the primary, as did the incumbent mayor won the primary. So we went on to the general election. In the primary, I went over to North Carolina Central University's campus to, talk about my campaign and et cetera. In the primary, no more than 50 people voted out of Central. But I still won because he had all these other precincts. Between that time and the general election, although this was a nonpartisan election, because my opponent at that time was a Republican, and he was touting his things as a Republican, I called on the Democratic Party. At that time was Chairman Terry McAuliffe to come in to be supportive of my case. Well, Terry came in. We went a lot of places. One place we went back over to Central's campus to talk to the students about the importance of voting, et cetera, et cetera. Make a long story short, at the end, I won the election. I won the election by only 500 votes. 500 votes were voted in Central's precinct. They went from 50 to 500. Now, I'm not saying all 500 voted for me. I did get quite a bit of them. But it's that whole issue about if somebody decided, we have, say, 50-some precincts. If 10 people in each one of those precincts had decided not to vote for me or not gone to vote, and you could have been one of them, okay, I wouldn't have won.
Right.
So when people ask, does your vote count, I'm a living testament that your vote counts. And who you vote for is even more important in where you place your vote.
Right. So does the funding, like you said, you needed funding for a lot of things. And from my understanding, like, they print money every day for anything they want to happen. How does that work? I'm asking because I don't know.
that doesn't work. That doesn't work that way at the local level.
Right.
Okay. We get funds. When I say we, city council, county commissioners. The funding we get comes from property taxes, sales taxes, service and fees. When you pay your water bill, your sewer bill, that's where our money comes from. So we have to look at that, and then we have to figure out what is going to be the budget. Just like you run your barbershop. I mean, you know what your expenses are. You know what you have to pay your people. You know how many haircuts you got to make to bring that up, revenue. Same thing with city. It's a budget. So, we can pretty much determine how much money we're going to get from property taxes, sales tax, et cetera. Then we go and look at the different departments, what they're asking for, and then we tailor that to be accommodated. What happens in North Carolina, we have to have a balanced budget. See, like you're talking about in the federal, they can run deficits because they can print money. We can't do that. So we're required to have a balanced budget. So at the end of the year, when we do a budget, our revenues equal our expenses and a fund balance. So we never run a deficit. In how we fund things.
Okay. So how did you, earlier you said you was a lifelong Democrat.
Yeah.
How do you determine if you become a Democrat or a Republican?
Again, I said I was young. I mean, I don't want to get a lot in my background. When I finished high school, I was 16 years old, okay?
Right.
And when I finished college at Howard, I was 20 years old. And I hadn't paid a lot of attention to politics, but
I don't feel bad then.
Well, I'm telling you, that was the furthest thing from my mind.
Right.
But when I was old enough to register to vote, I registered. And at that time, the Democrats were what I thought I wanted to be, so I registered, and I just never changed. And I just got involved with the Democratic Party and politics throughout my life as an elected official.
So
some people don't register. Some people are independents. They choose not to register as a Democrat or Republican. They choose to register as independents. In fact, you got a large number of people in the state of North Carolina that are independents. So what that allows them to do is when you have these elections, primary elections of Republican, they can declare at that time whether they're going to vote for Republican or Democrat, and they go ahead and vote.
Right.
But it's not everybody's registered. I'm not recommending that, but I'm a Democrat. I like people to register as Democrats, but
So you saying you went in, you just voted, became a Democrat, registered a Democrat.
Yeah, and started getting involved in the Democratic parties. I mean, for example, I tell you when I ran for mayor, it was a nonpartisan position, which means you don't have to be a Republican or Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
But because my opponent was a Republican, and I saw him one day, I was sitting at home at TV, sitting on my couch, and you know how they show these clips, people on Wall Street ringing the bell.
Mm-hmm.
I saw my opponent up there with Rudy Giuliani, who was president, who was mayor of New York at that time, ringing the bell. I said, oh, what he's doing is associating himself with a high-level Republican,
Mm-hmm.
although the race is nonpartisan. So I said, I got to get into the Democratic mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I brought in Terry McAuliffe, and we did all the Democratic stuff. But and Terry McAuliffe at that time was a good friend of President Bill Clinton. He got Bill Clinton to do robocalls for me the night before the election. And back then in 2001, if you get a call from President Bill Clinton saying, I'd like you to vote for Bill Bell, you know, it meant something. I mean, people get robocalls now, they don't pay as much attention to them.
Right.
So that was my other partner. And so when Barack Obama was running, I remember he came to Durham, and he met with about 5 or 6 of us down at North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company to, you know, talk about what he wanted to do. And I wasn't so sure about him at that time because, as I said, Bill Clinton had helped me get elected mayor, and Hillary Clinton was running.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I knew more about Hillary than I knew about Barack.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to fill it out. And I had a former college schoolmate that lives in Chicago, and he told me, he said, the guy you got to watch out for is this guy named Barack. It's a Barack, yeah, Barack Obama. You better watch out for him. I said, okay, watch out for him. So when he came to Durham, you know, he made his pitch, and we talked. And then later on, he was coming back to Durham as part of his campaign to speak at North Carolina Central University.
Mm-hmm.
And his campaign called and asked would I introduce him.
Mm-hmm.
And so that said an awful lot because I was running my own campaign. So I said, well, you know, what's he going to do for me? But the bottom line is he came on Central's campus.
All right.
I introduced him. He said some nice things about me. In fact, that's when Thomas Stitt was running.
Okay.
I was running Thomas Stitt.
Right.
So he said some nice things. And as a result, I stayed in his campaign. When his campaign formed in North Carolina, a few of his campaign people happened to be Howard grads, and they knew I was the mayor. They contacted me, so we got involved. And, you know, he got elected. And during the whole time I was mayor, I had opportunities to go to the White House and et cetera, meet with some of his people. But,
Well, speaking of that, so reparations, that's a big talk.
Yeah.
Late. I know he didn't talk much about it or speak up for blacks as much in the White House as far as reparations, but he did speak a lot. I seen an interview or something when I think he said that we deserve it, but he didn't really say it while he was in the White House. And some people say, well, he couldn't have said that in the White House. I'm like, why not?
well, you could have said it, but you have to pick your places and times to do things. So,
He come in like Trump. Trump say anything in the White House.
well, I don't know anybody like Trump. I mean, that's a whole different story.
Right.
I mean,
Well, I'm just talking about as far as being vocal, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Why don't you think he could, said anything?
I don't know. I mean, I never really gave that a whole lot of thought. I mean, it obviously is an issue and it's something that is being talked about. But you know, I'm not so sure why he did or didn't say.
So you believe we deserve reparations?
I think we deserve the fact that we went through an awful lot as citizens in this country, and we bared a lot of the burden of this country growing. Right. And I think somehow that should be acknowledged. Now, whether it's acknowledged through reparations in terms of money or land or whatever, I think there should be some acknowledgement to that.
Yeah, some people say, some black people say that they shouldn't give us money because we'll just throw it away.
Well, I mean, that's I can't tell people how to spend their money.
Right. But you think we should get it, though?
Well, I think there's a way to, I guess, help make up for some things that were done to us.
Yeah. And another thing, going back to your when you said how you became a Democrat, I think that's the problem with a lot of people now. They're growing up, they just know their family members or friends are Democrat, and then they become a Democrat, but not really knowing why they are a Democrat.
Well, again, I think if you're really serious about it, I think you need to make some comparisons in terms of what the leaders in the Democratic Party are proposing versus leaders in the Republican Party or any other party,
Right.
and see how that best fits into what your concerns are. I mean, think about health care. You know, when Obama was president, he pushed that. You know, they tried to denigrated by calling it Obamacare, you know, to give it a negative tone.
Right.
But it's no question in my mind. It's done a lot for a lot of people in this country, not just black people. And Republicans weren't supporting that. So, you know, if I'm sitting there and I'm saying, well, hey, you know, here's this guy talking about doing something that's going to be helpful not only to me but my people, and you got this other group saying, I don't want any part of it. If we do, they go attach all kind of strings to it. You know, people can't work and stuff like that. So it, you know, gives me a reason for making a choice. So I think you have to look inward at what's important to you as an individual.
Right.
And then figure out who's controlling those things and what parties are controlling those things and what are they saying about it that would make you want to support them versus supporting somebody else that's not doing that.
Right. I know one thing. This voting thing will break up families and friends.
Well, you know, that happens, but you know, that's life.
Yeah. Can you tell me what super PAC is? Do you know? Have you heard of that?
Well, the term super PAC means it gets back to funding,
right,
for campaigns, and you know, sometimes groups come together and bundle their money for this particular cause or this particular candidate. And so they give the money to them. They call themselves a super PAC.
Right.
I mean, you, him, and 3 other guys can come together and say, we're going to form a PAC for Joe Blow.
Right.
Okay, I want all you guys to give us money for Joe Blow. And we're super PAC for Joe Blow. And so we hand that money over to Joe Blow for his campaign.
Right. Cause I've been seeing a lot of that. That's how actually stuff get passed in the White House. Or you know, they had these super PACs who bring all this money together and say, hey, we want this done.
Well, you know, you have what you call lobbyists. And lobbyists are professionals. They go and argue a certain point, and they argue to not only do they argue to people in the White House, they argue to the legislators.
Right.
They lobby state legislators. They even come in and lobby local elected officials, depending on what the issue is. And that's just our form of government and the way things operate in our country. That you come together as a group, and you think you're strong as a group to present your argument to whoever you want to present it to. And likewise, if they need money, if you're able to give money to them, you do that. Now, it's up to the individual candidate to decide what they're going to do. As an elected official, I always reserve the right to make the final decision on my vote. I mean, I listen to people. And in fact, I'm a very good listener. I don't do a lot of talking.
Right.
You got me talking more now than I normally do. But
Thank you.
I pride myself in listening because my sense is that I don't have all the answers. I have some of the answers. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And if you're sitting around a table, whether it's a county commissioners or a city council, those people got there on their own right also, and they have ideas. So I tend to listen, and I tend to step in when I think something should have been said that hadn't been said. Plus, I was a chairman because I could talk anytime I wanted to, so that wasn't an issue for me.
Right. Have you heard of the book Powernomics by Clark Anderson?
No, I haven't.
I think he was from Winston too. But in his book, he says desegregation should have been about redistribution, wealth, power, resources, not social integration. What do you think about that?
Well, that says an awful lot. It depends on how you define social integration. I mean, does it mean that, you know, we should have still had places in our communities where only blacks could live?
Yeah, I think that's what he meant.
Yeah, well, see, I disagree with that. I mean, I think if people have the whereabouts and the funds to purchase a house, they'll be able to purchase whatever they want if the house is up for sale. So I don't like redlining. If he meant that it shouldn't have been, we should have kept segregated schools versus integrating schools, I disagree with that. So, you know, it depends on what he meant by social integration. And in terms of reparations, again, it's about, so you go give money back, how much you going to give back? What's going to be the criteria? Where's the money going to come from? And those are the devils in the details that have to be worked out. So up here it sounds good, but when you get into the details, it gets to be a bit more cumbersome in trying to implement it.
Yeah, some people think we did thrive more in just having a black community.
Well, yeah, I've heard that you know when things were segregated, we were a lot better off. Look, I grew up in a segregated system.
Right.
Okay, I grew up when I finished high school in 1957 in Winston-Salem, Atkins High School, predominantly black high school. Brown versus Board was in 1954. And Brown versus Board when they declared segregation illegal and you had to, integrate schools. So I grew up in a segregated system. I wouldn't want to grow up under that again. I wouldn't want my kids growing up under that.
Right.
I told you I went to Howard to be an electrical engineer. The only reason I went to Howard was I happened to have an assistant principal. His name was Togo West Sr. His son name was Togo West Jr., who later became the Secretary of the Army. I mean, that's how, but I said all that to say, he thought I was good in math. He had gone to Howard. He said, you ought to go to Howard and study engineering. I didn't have the slightest idea what an engineer did. The only thing I knew about engineering, somebody drove a train. Okay, that's how far removed I was from, what was going on. So, if I'd stayed in a segregated system, I never would have been able to achieve some of the things that I've been able to achieve, and a lot of other people have been, and yourself. I mean, I look at where you're sitting now.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I can imagine that if somebody proposed having this system or this barbershop over in this area 30, 40 years ago, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So, but anyway, there are pros and cons, but I never say that I was better off when I was in a segregated system than an integrated system. I think what people can think about is that might have been more caring. You hear the story about if you got a beating at school, you got home, you got another beating. If the neighbor saw you doing this, they tell you when you got home, the other neighbor would take care. There was that feeling of familiarity, family, and I thought that was good. And I still think that's good.
Right. But
not at the expense of staying segregated in your place the rest of your life and can't do this and can't do that. No.
Right. Well, so what? Tell me, what is UDI? What is that? What is?
UDI stands for. Well, let me back up. UDI used to be the acronym for United Durham Incorporated. Okay, which was a for-profit organization that was started here in Durham to hopefully provide economic development, et cetera, in the black community. It started as a for-profit organization. It didn't do as well. They did modular housing. They had a grocery store on a one-way street up on Mangum Street. That didn't go well. So they converted and decided to become a nonprofit. So when they did that, they converted to a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit. They kept the acronym UDI, and it expanded to UDI Community Development Corporation. So that's what it's known as now, UDI CDC. UDI doesn't stand for anything. When I said it doesn't stand for anything, it's this big carryover from what it used to be. But the bigger thing is this UDI CDC, UDI Community Development Corporation. And that's where I work. I was on the board when it was formed in 1994, although I was still, I was on the board at that time. And I stayed on the board for about 10 years. Then I got off. So when I retired from IBM in 1996, Ed Stewart, who is now deceased, was the president of UDI CDC, and he's the one that really carried UDI CDC through tough times and bad times and et cetera. Asked if I would come on board as a part of the staff. And I had some other officers do some other things, but it was doing the type of work that I liked. I felt I could make a contribution. So I went on as the executive vice president, and I'm still in that position now, although Ed is deceased, and we're running that. And as a for-profit, one of the things that we did, where our home is now, is in the industrial park off of Fayetteville Road. It was a 9-acre, called it a pig farm. That was converted into an industrial park where you see buildings that have employment, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at the food line down on Fayetteville Street, we built that, and we leased that out to Food Line because it was sort of a food desert before that happened. We've done some affordable housing in downtown Durham and et cetera. So, and we're still doing some stuff in the industrial park. So we're doing it under the guise of a nonprofit, but what we try to do is to improve the economic development, particularly in the communities in which we work and have businesses and have locations, providing jobs and things like. We used to have a program called Youth Bill, and that was a program where young people who, for whatever reason, had not finished high school, they came into this program. They were able to get their GED, but the real hook was they would learn to construct houses. So we built quite a few affordable houses under that program, and some of the kids stayed on, and stayed in construction. Others did other things, but it put a little bit more structure in their life, and it made a difference. In fact, the young lady who's our administrative assistant at UDI now was in that program, and so she's now working for us as our administrative assistant at UDI CDC.
Do you still have them programs? Or?
We don't have the Youth Build program anymore now. We've had a variety of programs. As I said, we started in 1994, so we're 50-some years old almost now. But we don't have those programs now. Our main program now is managing the properties that we own in terms of what we're doing with that.
You don't think you need to get them back? Youth program?
No, I'm not saying. In fact, I think someone applied and got a Youth Build grant in the city. I don't know who they are, but it's just that, again, you have to know what your capabilities are. Right. To run programs like that, you have to have staff and a lot of things that we're at that point now. I think our biggest emphasis now is trying to look at the buildings we own and possibly repurposing some of them into some other entities.
Okay. So you in charge of all these buildings going up around here?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. Not much. I mean, a lot of things happened in the city when I was mayor, but it wasn't Bill Bell. It was the mayor and the city council that did these things. As I said, you don't do any of this stuff by yourself. Yeah. We created public-private partnerships, worked with the private sector, public sector, did things like DPAC, did like the Lost at Southside, which used to be Rolling Hills. I don't know if you know what that was.
No.
You know where Fayetteville Street is? You know where Hayti Heritage Center is?
Right.
You know the apartment complex across the street from that? We developed that.
Okay.
And we did some stuff over in Northeast Central Durham. What used to be Barnes Avenue is now Eastway Village. We developed that development. And but we've done things by the city, and we've done things in partnership with the private sector and the public sector to do things.
I was glad to see you still getting around,
Well, I enjoy it. It's more at my pace now than somebody else's pace, but I enjoy what I do, and I've just been fortunate to be able to do it. It was fortunate to be elected. As I said, nobody made you be an elected official, and they, just like they put you in, they can take you out. So.
Yeah, that was a lot of responsibility for you to take on.
Well, again, but I had the support, and I haven't worked at IBM, in the management of IBM. I got a lot of training there that I was able to transfer to the stuff I was doing in the political side also, so that helped.
Right. Well, what's next? Just riding it out at UDI?
Pretty much. I'm on a few boards. I'm on Central's board. I chair the North Carolina Railroad Board, which runs from Charlotte to Morehead City and the train track and stuff like that. So you just spread out everywhere. You doing everything? Well, not everywhere, not everything. just a few things, but things I enjoy doing. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Well, I was glad to have you. Well, I appreciate you offering me to come on and have this conversation. Yeah. Wish you the best. You see, people need to know more about what you're doing. Yeah, I try. I'm serious. Yeah. They need to know, especially young people. Right. Especially young people. I mean, you can be a great model for some of these young guys that are out in the street trying to figure out where they want to go, what they ought to be doing, and you got a life history that I think would mean a lot to them. Yeah, I'm trying to get out more in the community and speak. I got an engagement in a couple of weeks somewhere, Mentorship Program, Cornwallis, I think it is. Cornwallis. So I'm going to go speak over there. So I'm trying to get out and do more. That was one of the good things I liked about when I was mayor and he was county commissioner. I had an opportunity to speak to young people. They come to my office, I go to school and stuff like that. And they had a lot of good you talk about things that they do. I can recall I was at some elementary school and kids were saying, why we got so many potholes in the street? When I'm on my bus going through potholes. I came back and I told my staff, I said, look, people saying we got too many potholes. We need to do something about it. They put together a program they call it Pavinator, where they start filling the potholes in the street. And I remember one kid, in fact, his mother sort of teased me about it. He used to say he had a skateboard, and he had to ride it on the streets, on the sidewalks. And we ought to have some better place than that. I was talking to our people. We were at the skate park downtown. Okay. But that came as a result of a young person raising the issue. And fortunately, I was able to make some things happen on that. So we need to do that with the new mayor coming in. Put a bug in his ear about some things. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. They need to understand what your issues are. Right. So your issues can become their priorities rather than their priorities becoming your issues. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but Yeah.
We still have a lot of people around here saying Durham don't have anything, or they ain't doing nothing about this or that.
Well, you can always
Especially
say
with the
that.
crime in the city and stuff
Well,
like that.
that's
It's still gonna happen.
yeah. I don't. That's a whole different story.
Right.
That's a whole different
Yeah.
story. But that was one of my priorities
Mm-hmm.
when I came in, trying to reduce crime,
Mm-hmm.
as well as trying to revitalize neighborhoods that have been distressed for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the neighborhoods were in the black neighborhoods. So that's why we did the things we did in Northeast Central Durham. That's why we did the stuff we did over on Fayetteville Street with the Lost South Side, which used to South Side, which used to be Rolling Hills. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But that was about 26 acres we the city bought up and transformed it into what you got now. But it takes time to do those things. Those we didn't get in those conditions overnight.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't going to get out of them overnight.
Right.
What people want to see is that you're trying to make some progress and moving forward. And that's what we were attempting to do.
Right. That brought me to gentrification. Some people don't like. How can I say it? They say the white people come out here and clean neighborhoods, take everything away, and push black people out, know where to live, and things like that.
That's a concern, but I think you have to be careful about when you say that.
Right.
I mean, for most black families, the biggest amount of wealth they have is their home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of us don't have businesses like you do and stuff. Our biggest value is in our home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for you sitting where you're sitting, come in and tell me, who owns my house,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody's offering me X number of dollars to buy my house that will allow me to do something else that I shouldn't do it because of gentrification. That gets to be a personal thing.
Right. But do they offer everybody? They don't offer everybody money though for the area.
They don't take nobody's property. I mean, the stuff we did in Rolling Hills, we didn't take property.
Mm-hmm.
It was a willing buyer, willing seller. In fact, I told our staff, we aren't taking anybody's property. If people don't want to sell, we won't try to force them to do it. We could do that, eminent domain. We didn't apply that.
Okay.
We went over on Barnes Avenue, 2 blocks of mainly rental housing, maybe 3 or 4 homeowners. We presented a plan as what we wanted to do. We bought the property at a willing buyer, willing seller, didn't take it.
Okay.
People talk about downtown. Wasn't nothing downtown in 2001.
Right.
I mean, I remember kids telling me, yeah, we used to go downtown and throw a brick through a window because that was our fun because nobody was down there.
Right.
So the development that took place in downtown, you weren't displacing people that were living down there because nobody was living down there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you get in some of these other communities, some of that is where people said gentrification is happening. And how they define gentrification is that neighborhoods that previously were of a certain style, certain ilk, certain demographics, people came in and bought those properties and built something else. Mm-hmm. They didn't take the properties. They bought them.
Okay.
And so if I'm sitting in my house, if somebody comes and say, I'm going to give you 3 times what your house is worth or whatever it is, and I'm looking around and saying, hey, where am I now? What can I do with that money? And you tell me, well, don't you sell it because it's gentrification. I say, okay, you come here and pay my bills that I'm struggling with, all right?
Yeah.
So, it depends on how it's looked at and where it is. What we tried to do, at least when I was mayor, and it happened over on the south side, what we tried to do is to say, okay, if the neighborhood is changing and property values are going up and tax values are going up, and they're going up as a result of something the city did,
Mm-hmm.
then what we would do would be to give you a grant, a forgivable grant. So if your property taxes were, say, $1,000, and now because all this stuff is going around, it's $2,000, we'll give you $1,000 to pay that $2,000. So you won't be impacted by, if you want to stay there.
Well.
If you want to stay there. So you won't be impacted. That was a plan that I was trying to push through. It didn't get to fruition when I was there, but they're using it now.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a sensitivity to that if the city is doing something that's causing property values to go up and people are being impacted by it that want to stay in their homes, we're going to give you some type of relief to allow you, if it's only property tax. Now, if you got some other kind of bills, we can't deal with that.
Right.
But if your sole thing is my property taxes have gone up because you built all this stuff around here and I can't pay my property tax, we say, okay, what were your property taxes? If your property taxes were $1,000 and now $2,000, we'll give you $1,000. Now, you got to stay in the house. We put some stipulations in it, but at least we tried to ameliorate some of the issues that have been caused because of what we did as a city.
Okay. Well, I hope that helped y'all better understand what they call gentrification. Well, that's it. Hey, look, I'm glad to meet you.
Well, same here.
The legend, Mr. Bill Bell.
About a legend.
You are a legend. You're a legend.
Legend in the eyes of the beholders. And people got different eyes, different eyesights, and all that stuff.
You're right.
So,
You're right.
yeah, so.
Well, there you have it. Stay tuned to the next time to the Impel Forward podcast. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Impel Forward podcast.